Sometimes low desire is just stress and we need to change stress levels. Sometimes low desire is a health thing and we need to see our doctor, our naturopath, whatever. Sometimes it's this dynamic we're talking about, and sometimes we have a partner who's emotionally checking out. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sex After Kids podcast. The studio is evolving here, but very slowly. So today I want to talk about something a little bit different, or a different side of the coin, I guess, which is when a woman or a person with a vagina is the higher libido partner. Right? You've done bedtime, you've gotten everybody onto bed, you've put on the outfit, you've been extra affectionate, you've been sending every signal you know how to send. You are ready, you are willing, and you want your partner, and they turn over, pick up their phone, say they're tired. And the silence that follows is really hard. And if you're the woman in the relationship with a higher sex drive, you know this specific kind of loneliness. And I feel like it has a different flavor for those who are socialized as women than those socialized as men, and certainly for those in, same sex, trans, or other kinds of couples. There really is this sort of stinging rejection that can make you feel broken, needy, and almost painfully unattractive. And you really start to wonder what's wrong with you, what you're doing wrong, what's shifted. So today, I kind of want to pull the curtain back on this silent reversal, because it isn't just a you problem. Like in couples with the reverse challenge, it's a dynamic that countless couples kind of fall into. And the key word I said there is dynamic, right? This mismatch in desire is a significant issue for at least 1/3 of all long-term couples. So you're not alone in this, but that doesn't make it any easier to deal with. The advice that you've been given, though, or what your brain wants you to do about initiating more, about putting on the fancy lingerie, about being sexier, in fact, can be making things worse. So today, I want to kind of dismantle the myth that this is about your physical attractiveness. I want to expose sort of the hidden relationship dynamic that you and your partner have potentially created and how to break that cycle. And I want to give you a set of tools and tangible conversation starters to move from frustration to connection. My promise to you is that by the end of this, you will understand that your desire isn't the problem. Neither is your partner's. You aren't broken. Neither are they. You're just navigating a complex situation right now. And like I say all the time, you just don't have a map to get out of the mud. So the first place that most of us go when we feel this rejection, especially if we are a woman or a person with a vagina, is the mirror. So we tend to think, if I just lost 10 pounds, if I wore more lace, if I tried that thing that I saw on Instagram, then he would want me. But the hard truth, or the opportunity maybe, is that in a committed long-term relationship, a sudden drop in desire is almost really never about your physical hotness. You can be the most conventionally beautiful person in the world, but if the emotional and relational circuits are overloaded in your relationship, the current of desire is not going to flow. And when you work overtime to attract him and it fails, it feels like a devastating personal indictment of your worth. But the paradox is that your extra effort might actually be adding to the problem. When you are constantly performing sexiness or over initiating to get a reaction, to get sort of this validation that you are wanted and desired, it can create this pressure cooker effect. He feels the weight of your expectation, of your need for validation. And for many people, but especially men, expectation turns into this demand. And nothing kills spontaneous desire faster than a demand. So your attempt to feel wanted accidentally becomes one more job to do. Really just like when we're in the opposite scenario, but there's a slightly different flavor to it often. So that's the first piece of it. The second piece is this co-created dynamic that we get stuck in, okay? Because the real heart of the issue is often what can be referred to as like the mother or caregiver trap. I don't really like calling it that because I don't think the responsibility is all on the mom or the mother or caregiver in this dynamic. But it's a dynamic that we all create or often create partially because of the gender scripts, which we've talked about here before. So those silent rules and expectations about how men and women are supposed to behave in relationships show up. And, I just want to note, right, like these dynamics show up in relationships for all genders, but and also there's a particular flavor to how most men get socialized and how most women get socialized. And those scripts and those stories affect how we approach sex and how we deal with sex, right? So this dynamic often looks like a hyper independent type A doer type of a woman, right? You manage the schedules, the meals, the emotional well-being of the entire household. And when you get stressed, you don't slow down. You double down on control, on needing things to be done a certain way, your way, because that's how you feel safe. And I don't throw shade here, gals, because this is me, okay? And he is likely one of those easygoing good guys. He loves you, and to keep the peace, he's going to double down on doing whatever you ask. Over time, you are essentially both using old strategies from your childhood to get by. You, as the higher libido partner, are eating your need to be vulnerable and supported because, ooh, that feels fucking terrifying and icky. And he is eating his need to be a leader and an equal partner and to show up because that feels icky and uncomfortable for him too. The brutal truth here is that when you boss him around all day, even if it's with love and for the good of your family and because you feel like there's no other option, it is not teamwork between equals. I know you know that, but it is you being his mom, and that's not sexy for either of you. You don't want to be his mom, and he doesn't want to sleep with his. The key here is that you are both responsible for creating this dynamic. And if you want to learn more about that, you can catch my mental load series that I did in December. You are both responsible for fixing it. As a type A, hyper independent, all the things woman, we have got to leave room for our partners. If there's no space for them to step into, they're not going to step into it. Sometimes that means letting them do things the quote unquote wrong way. Sometimes that means actually letting them beat you to the punch when it comes to a decision and not filling the space with your answers and your solutions. And sometimes it means being vulnerable and just letting them do things for you, letting them care for you, letting them take care of you instead of focusing on this need to do it all yourself all of the time. Okay. At the same time, he has to be willing to step into the space that you create, to take charge of himself, of his responsibilities, and sometimes, yes, even you. So this is not about the traditional male leadership trad wife BS, okay? This is about personal leadership from both of you. You both have needs, you both have limits, and it's about working together as a team. I will share here as a person who's been in this dynamic and in and out of it and continually working on it, because really what we're talking about are survival patterns from your childhood. One of the sexiest things my husband ever did was to literally put his foot down, stand up to me, and like not let me railroad him. I'm sure I've shared this story before on the podcast. We were getting married. I was, desperate to have a babe, had wanted one for about 10 years. Most of my 20s essentially. And I was really pushing for a new house and a new baby like pretty quickly after we got married. And he was just like, I can only do one of these things. And it was the most frustrating conversations of my life. And also, he couldn't have been sexier in that moment when he compassionately and with love set his limit and said, you don't get to just railroad me and have everything that you want. And I think the challenging thing often, right, as hyper independent women is like we want so deeply underneath it all to be held, to be vulnerable, to surrender in bed, but we don't leave room for our man to do that. And we also sometimes choose a man who's just willing to go with the flow when really deep down we're looking for something stronger to push up against, right? So I could do a whole podcast just on that. I think it's so fascinating and so interesting. But this dynamic is going to be a big part of where your partner's desire has gone. So, another piece here that I want to talk about is his side of the bed pressure and partnership, right? Because the thing that we need to remember also is that his silence isn't happening in a vacuum. Men are culturally conditioned to believe that they should always want it, that they're supposed to be the higher libido partner. So when they don't, because of stress, fatigue, health conditions, what's happening in our relationship, or just life, there can often be a very deep sense of shame and failure and not enoughness that comes. Right? If he feels like he can't measure up or that he's going to disappoint you, he's going to stop trying altogether. It's a defense mechanism, right? Avoiding the attempt is less painful than essentially facing the feeling of inadequacy. So, a really true, crucial question can be: does your partner feel loved and appreciated for who he is outside of the bedroom? Or does he feel like a project that you are constantly trying to fix? If he only gets your focused attention when you are frustrated about sex or chores or the schedule, he's going to associate intimacy and even connection with you as like pressure and failure. This is not about making him feel like a king. That's empowering for anyone. This is about seeing each other as whole people. Again, it's about creating moments of appreciation that have nothing to do with chores or kids. It has everything to do with acknowledging one another, noticing the good, as I called it in that episode where we can use parenting tools on our partners. This kind of goes back to the previous piece here, which is he needs to feel like your partner in the light of day to feel like your lover in the dark. And I'm not saying that's all on you to change. That's on both of you to change, but that's the dynamic. That's the heart of what we need to shift often if it's not a health thing like testosterone or some other issue. All of these are strategies that people can use to avoid the feelings of frustration, unhappiness, disconnection from their partner that they're feeling when they don't know how to face that feeling and find a solution. And I want to just say straight out the gates here that I talk to plenty of men whose female partners are in the avoidance space, which means that they are choosing scrolling on their phones or watching their TVs and avoiding any kind of real conversation about their relationship because it's just too uncomfortable. Or they get to a place where they feel like anything their partner's trying to do is fix them, when really what they're grappling with is the fact that marriage requires growth and change and evolution from both of us. It's gonna point out the sticky stuff. And that's not our partner's fault. It's just the nature of being in a relationship. But when we don't want to look at the sticky stuff, it's easier to just blame our partner. So, all of this to say that, sometimes low desire is just stress and we need to change stress levels. Sometimes low desire is a health thing and we need to see our doctor, our naturopath, whatever. Sometimes it's this dynamic we're talking about, and sometimes we have a partner who's emotionally checking out. And if that's the case, then it's a different conversation. It's a different question, right? When we think about porn use, what I want you to think of is they might be escaping the stress of your sex life, but they might also be using porn to escape the stress of their job. But that could then have an impact on your relationship, because what it means is porn gives you the dopamine hit without vulnerability, without communication, and without any pressure to perform. Okay. There is no effort required from them. There is no output required, but it also means all that sexual energy goes kind of into a vacuum instead of being fed into your relationship. So if you suspect that this is happening, or if there's a history of cheating, then the libido gap isn't really your core problem, right? It's the smoke from a much bigger fire. And you cannot sexy lingerie your way out of a partner who's actively choosing an external substitute over you and over growing in your marriage. So in these cases, the conversation has to shift from why don't we have sex to are you still in this with me? What's going on for you right now? Okay, So, last piece here, let's move from just understanding the problem to actually doing something about it. Now, if you've been around for a while, I'm always going to say we can't change what we can't talk about. But first, we actually need to do a little bit of reflection for ourselves. So, before you ever even talk to your partner, a couple of things you can explore. Where am I in manager mode? Look at your last 48 hours. When did I direct him like an employee instead of collaborating with him like a partner? Okay. Second is my initiation, my desire for sex when I ask for sex, a true bid for connection, or has it become a test of my worth? Am I reaching for him because I want him or because I need to prove that I'm still desirable? He can feel the difference. Can you feel the difference? And the last little piece of reflection here is, what does appreciation look like in our house? When was the last time I praised him for his character, his mind, or his humor, something that has nothing to do with his role as a dad or a provider? And just as important, when was the last time that I felt truly appreciated and seen outside of my roles as mother and wife? Once you have sat with those reflection questions, it's time to talk, but not in the bedroom, okay? Not when you're hurt, when you're neutral, maybe when you're having a good time. And a couple of these kinds of starters can look like, hey, babe, I've realized I've been in manager mode a lot, and it feels like we're kind of creating this dynamic where I'm the boss and you're the employee. That is not what I want. I want a partner. I want to let go of some control. And I think I need your help to like reshape this dynamic. Are you willing to figure this out with me? Another approach could be something more like, can I be honest? I really miss our physical connection, but I'm worried that my desire is starting to feel like another pressure for you. Does it ever feel that way? I wonder if we can do some learning together to get out of that cycle, because I want sex to feel fun and easy for both of us. And one last piece here can be, I'm feeling a distance between us lately that makes me feel kind of lonely. And I want to understand what's going on in your world. Is it stress? Is it us? Are you okay? If you want some further guidance, further prompts on how to have these conversations, these harder, scarier conversations, or if you need a little bit more motivation, you can check the communication playlist on YouTube and it'll guide you to some other episodes that I did. If you take one thing from our time together today, let it be this: your desire is a gift. It is a sign of life. It is a sign of health and of your beautiful capacity for connection. Do not let a season of mismatch drive convince you that you are unattractive or unworthy. Okay. You have learned today that fixing it is not about you being sexier. It is about being brave enough to look at the dynamic you are both creating and deciding to build a new one together. It's about shifting from control to connection, from managing to partnering, from, you're the problem to us against the problem. Starting these conversations is the first most important step, but then what? What do you do to turn this understanding into a real, tangible experience without it feeling forced or worse, like another chore, right? This is exactly why I created the Naked Fun Toolkit. So a lot of people have tried scheduling sex before, and it often has felt awkward or fallen flat, especially for the lower libido partner. This is different. This toolkit is your complete step-by-step plan for a sex date that does not suck. Okay, it's a guided experience designed to melt away the awkwardness and help you both shift from busy parent mode to playful lover mode without the guesswork, without you trying to be more attractive, and without the pressure. So it's got my 4-part framework for planning a party that everyone's libido actually wants to come to. And then it's got a guided date night to help you leave busy parent land and land in sexy lover land. If you are ready to stop hoping for a great night and actually have a plan for one, you can grab the Naked Fun Toolkit using the link down in the show notes below. Let's take intimacy off of the chore list and turn it back into a getaway for both of you. Thank you so much for being here, my friends. As always, share with a friend if something here resonated with you. Find me over on Instagram to say hello. I love hearing from you, and I will talk to you soon.